Hey everyone, ready for another deep dive? Today we're heading into the world of unexplained phenomena. Those stories that make you question if maybe, just maybe, there are things out there we just can't explain.
I think we all have that little bit of curiosity about the unknown, don't we?
Oh, absolutely. And to help us explore, we've got Vile Visions as our source material, a podcast that really gets into some creepy stuff.
Definitely not for the faint of heart.
No, definitely not. So get ready because we're talking strange creatures, people vanishing without a trace, and events that seem to defy all logic. Ready to get started?
Absolutely. Let's dive in.
Okay, let's start in a place you might not expect. Argentina, 2008. Picture a small town, late at night.
Ah, setting the mood already.
Right. So we've got a group of friends just hanging out, filming each other with a phone, just doing what friends do, and then they hear it.
Hear what? Don't leave us hanging.
This weird noise, like someone's throwing rocks. Naturally, they're curious, so they go to investigate.
Oh, I can already see where this is going. Curiosity and the unknown. Never good mix.
And out of the shadows, this figure appears. Small, humanoid. The people who saw it, they said it looked like a gnome.
A gnome. Seriously.
Yep, a gnome. I can only imagine how freaked out they were, seeing something like that in the dark.
Yeah, I'd probably run the other way. But, okay, let's think about this. How reliable are eyewitness accounts, really? Could their brains have been playing tricks on them?
That's a good point. Like, have you ever heard of pareidolia? That's where our brains try to find familiar patterns, even in random things.
Oh, yeah, like seeing faces in clouds or, well, a gnome in the shadows.
Exactly. It's like our brains are wired to make sense of the world, even if it means making things up. So even with these eyewitness accounts, we have to be careful.
Absolutely. Eyewitness testimony is tricky, especially when you're talking about stressful situations. Our memories are not always as reliable as we think.
It makes you wonder how much of what we see is real and how much is just our brains filling in the blanks.
It's a good question, and one that's especially relevant when we're talking about the unexplained.
Yeah.
We have to balance our natural curiosity with a healthy dose of skepticism.
Oh, for sure. It's like walking a tightrope between belief and doubt. Okay, so with that in mind, let's travel back in time to England, 1855. Have you ever heard of the Devil's Footprints?
Can't say I have. What's that all about?
Picture this. You wake up, it's a snowy morning, and there are these hoof-like tracks everywhere. And I mean everywhere. On rooftops, across fields, even through tiny pipes, miles and miles of them.
Whoa, hold on. How is that even possible?
That's the thing. No one could explain it. People were terrified. They thought it was the devil literally walking the earth.
I bet that sparked some wild theories.
Oh, you have no idea. Some folks thought it was a hoax, a giant prank. Others said maybe it was a weird weather thing, ice formations made by the wind or something. There was even talk of escaped kangaroos.
Kangaroos in England. That's a new one.
Right. But here's the kicker. Over 150 years later, in 2009, similar tracks reappeared in Devon.
Wait, seriously? Are you telling me the devil took a stroll again?
Well, that's the mystery. Makes you wonder if there's something environmental going on that we haven't figured out yet.
Maybe some specific weather conditions that create these weird tracks. Who knows? It's definitely strange, though.
Okay, ready for something a little different? We're talking a family, a farmhouse, and, wait for it, a talking mongoose.
Okay, you're pulling my leg now.
I wish I was. This is the story of the Irving family on the Isle of Man back in 1931. They claimed they had this entity living with them. They called him Jeff.
Jeff the talking mongoose. I'm intrigued, but also a little skeptical.
Oh, I hear you. But this wasn't just random noises. They said Jeff actually talked to them. He even claimed he was a ghost trapped in a weasel's body.
A ghost in a weasel's body. That's quite the story. What else did this Jeff say?
Oh, all sorts of things. Said he was born in India in 1852, called himself an extra clever mongoose. He'd make these pronouncements, even threatened to turn people to stone if they saw him.
Okay, that's a little creepy, even for me.
Ah.
But come on, talking animals. Is there any science behind that?
I mean, parrots can mimic human speech, but this seems different, right? Some folks think the Irving family made the whole thing up, maybe for attention.
I could see that. But then there were people who visited the farmhouse and said they heard Jeff talking too.
Right. So what, were they all in on it? Or could it be something like, what was that term you used earlier?
You mean shared delusion. That's where a false belief spreads from one person to another. It happens a lot in close groups, especially when they're isolated or stressed.
So you're thinking maybe the Irvings, out there on their farms, somehow created this shared delusion of a talking mongoose?
It's a possibility, isn't it? Our minds are powerful things. Especially in isolation, they can come up with some wild stories to cope with reality. Think about how easily rumors and conspiracy theories spread.
That's true. It's like our brains are always trying to find an explanation, even if there isn't one.
Exactly. Sometimes the line between what's real and what we believe is very blurry, especially when it comes to the unexplained. But hey, that's what makes it so fascinating.
I completely agree.
It really makes you think, doesn't it, about how our minds can create these elaborate narratives, sometimes blurring the lines between reality and imagination.
It's like a reminder that we're not always in control of our own perceptions. Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and talk about disappearances, those cases where people just vanish, leaving behind more questions than answers. One case that's always fascinated me is the story of James Warson.
Oh yeah, that one's a classic, isn't it? It takes us back to 1873 England. Warson was this athlete, and he'd made a bet that he could run like 20 miles in record time.
So a bit of a daredevil then.
You could say that. Anyway, he set off on this run with two of his friends following behind in a carriage, to keep track of his time.
Sounds pretty straightforward. What went wrong?
Well, that's the mystery. According to his friends, they saw him stumble, heard a scream, and then nothing. He was just gone.
Hold on, just vanished, like poof.
Pretty much. They went to the spot where they last saw him, but there was no sign of him. His footprints literally just stopped in the middle of the road.
No struggle, no clues, nothing. That's so creepy. What did people think happened to him?
Oh, there were all sorts of theories. Some people thought maybe his friends had something to do with it, foul play, but there was no evidence to support that.
Right. So, what else? Alien abduction.
That was another popular theory, especially since there was no logical explanation. Some even said he might have slipped into another dimension or something.
Wow, okay. Talk about your mind-bending mysteries. But seriously, to just disappear like that, it's terrifying. His poor friends and family, never knowing what happened.
It's true. It really highlights how fragile life can be, how quickly things can change. And it makes you wonder, are there things happening around us that we just can't perceive? Things beyond our current understanding of reality.
Okay, now you're really making me think. But let's talk about another disappearance, one that involves a bit of technology. Have you ever heard of Larry and the CB radio distress calls?
Can't say I have. Tell me more.
This was back in 1973 when CB radios were all the rage. So picture this. You're scanning through the channels and suddenly you hear this panicked voice, a young boy calling for help. He says his name is Larry and he's trapped in a truck after an accident.
Oh no, that's awful. What happened? Did anyone find him?
That's the strange part. Larry's transmissions were picked up all over, covering multiple states. Hundreds of people joined the search, desperate to find him.
So they must have had a good idea of his location, right? With the radio signals and all.
You'd think so, but they never found him. Not a trace of Larry or the truck.
Wait, are you serious? All those people searching? And nothing.
Nothing. And here's the really eerie part. Some of the searchers claim they talked to Larry on the radio, even confirmed details about where he was, but it was like he was nowhere.
That's so unsettling. It makes you wonder, was it some kind of hoax? Or maybe a technical glitch with the radio signals?
Right. I mean, CB radios weren't exactly known for their reliability. But what if it wasn't a hoax? What if those calls were real and we just couldn't reach him?
That's a chilling thought.
Yeah.
It really shows how, even with all our technology, there are still limits to what we can do. Places where signals fade and information gets lost.
Okay, let's dive into a case that's full of secrecy and international intrigue. This one's about the Isdal Woman, a mystery that's been baffling investigators since 1970.
Oh, I've heard of this one. The lady found in Norway, right?
Yep, that's her. Imagine you're out hiking with your family and you come across a partially burned body. That's exactly what happened in the Isdal Valley.
That's a horrifying discovery. But what made this case so different from other unsolved deaths?
Well, the circumstances surrounding her death were strange, for sure. But the biggest mystery was her identity. She had no ID on her, and her fingerprints had been, get this, sanded off.
Sanded off.
Ah!
That's deliberate. It sounded like someone wanted to make sure she couldn't be identified.
Exactly. Like she was intentionally trying to erase her past. And the plot thickens. They found suitcases belonging to her, filled with wigs, disguises, and foreign currency.
Multiple identities, international travel. It sounds like something straight out of a spy novel.
Right. Some people theorized that she was a spy. Others thought maybe she was involved in some kind of criminal activity. But no one knows for sure.
And all those witnesses who saw her before she died, what do they say?
They described her as being really scared, like she was being followed or hunted. Which adds a whole other layer of creepiness to this story.
It makes you wonder, what secrets was she carrying? And who might have wanted to silence her?
The Isdal Woman's case is like a real-life puzzle with so many missing pieces. It's a reminder that there are still corners of our world shrouded in mystery, and some secrets might never be revealed.
Absolutely. And it highlights the human capacity for deception, for leading double lives, for disappearing into the shadows.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. From mysterious creatures to vanishing athletes, chilling radio transmissions, and a woman shrouded in secrets. It's been quite a journey through the unexplained.
It's amazing, isn't it? All these different stories, but they all kind of tap into that same human need to figure things out, even when they seem impossible to explain.
You're right. It's like whether it's a strange creature or someone disappearing, these stories force us to face the fact that we don't know everything and that there's so much out there that we just don't understand.
And facing that can be kind of scary, but it's also exciting, right? Because it means there's still so much to discover, so much we haven't even imagined yet.
It's true. It's like each case is a puzzle with missing pieces. And our brains, they just can't help but try to fill in those gaps.
Exactly. Sometimes we come up with logical explanations, but other times our minds go to those wilder places,
Mhm.
the supernatural, the paranormal, all those things we can't quite explain.
And that's what makes these stories so fascinating. Because they tell us about ourselves, about our hopes and fears, and how we make sense of the world, even the parts that seem to make no sense at all.
I think you've nailed it. So looking back at all the cases we've talked about, what are some of the big takeaways? What do you think our listeners should be thinking about?
Well, one thing that really stands out to me is the power of belief. We see it again and again, how easily people can be swayed by what they hear, by rumors, or even just by wanting to believe in something extraordinary.
Right. It's like that saying, seeing is believing, but sometimes it's more like believing is seeing.
Totally. Our brains are always filtering information, looking for patterns that fit what we already believe. And when you're dealing with the unexplained, those filters can get even stronger.
That's so true. We might focus on certain details, ignore others, and end up creating a story that supports what we already think, whether it's believing in ghosts or being super skeptical of anything paranormal.
It's a good reminder to be critical thinkers. Question your assumptions, consider different perspectives. Just because we can't explain something doesn't mean it's automatically supernatural or something. There might be a totally logical explanation out there just waiting to be discovered.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of these mysteries. They push us to think outside the box, to explore new ideas, and to look at the world with a sense of wonder.
So, what's the one thing you hope our listeners will take away from this deep dive into the unexplained? What's that final message you want to leave them with?
Well, I'd say the most important thing is to be both skeptical and open-minded. Don't be afraid to ask questions, to investigate, to dig deeper into the things that spark your curiosity. The world is full of mysteries, and sometimes the journey of figuring things out is just as amazing as finding the answers.
I love that. And on that note, we'll leave you with one last thought to ponder. What if the most incredible mysteries aren't out there in the world, but inside ourselves? What if the biggest discoveries we make are about the power and potential of our own minds? Keep exploring, keep questioning, and never lose that sense of wonder. Until next time, folks.